Hi, I'm Kirsten Ellsworth, and I am standing right now on the site, Mayan city of Mayapan. Today we have driven about 45 minutes south of Merida in the Yucatan to visit Mayapan, which is, for me, one of the most fascinating of the Maya sites because we don't know a lot about this site. And today I'm going to show you some of the really cool features of Mayapan, and also we will talk a little bit about the possible history. And I say possible because there are some contested parts of history with regard to Mayapan, and there's some different understandings. The building that you see behind me might look to you a little bit like something from Chichen Itza, and you are correct. Many of the buildings at Mayapan are copies, quick copies, sort of facsimile copies of buildings at the grand Maya city of Chichen Itza. Why are we looking at smaller versions? Well, this city of Mayapan, which is probably in a modern time about a 2-hour drive from Chichen Itza, this city was built after the fall of Chichen Itza. So around 1000 to 1050 AD or CE, a city that was already here, we see rise tremendously because the Mayans moved their kingdom to, or one of the headquarters, let's say, of the loose affiliations of the Maya culture to Mayapan. And what we will be seeing today appears to be construction that went up quickly and was still as elaborate. There are 4,000 structures on this site, but it wasn't quite as elaborate. And a very significant difference is that Mayapan was a walled, where we're standing, this was a walled city. And that is not the case with Chichen Itza. So why was there a wall? Well, you know, the Mayans had already kind of been pushed out of Chichen Itza. They may have fled here, some of the families, and there seems to be more of a fortress-like sense about Mayapan. One of the really interesting features of Mayapan, for those of you who are studying the Mayan architecture, is right behind me, the small doorway. And not only does the size of the door suggest how small the people were who lived on the site, and we believe that at the height of Mayapan, post-classic period, there were about 12,000 people living in the walls and an additional 10,000 outside of the walls. You also see behind me evidence of the triangular shaped top of the door. And these were the architectural innovations that the Mayans knew of and that they knew how to execute that made things stand. So as we explore more of Mayapan, keep your eyes out for those doorways. Also look for the extremely straight edges and a lot of evidence of the slope and panel style of architecture, which is a characteristic of a lot of the Mayan sites. Now I am standing in front of the famous temple of Kukulkan here at Mayapan, and it is a reproduction of sorts of the famous temple at Chichen Itza. And you see very small steps on the front of that temple. Who would have walked up there? Well, today, if you visit Mayapan and you're in really good shape and the heat isn't getting to you, you can run right up to the top of that temple. But in the Maya times, who would have gone up there? Priests, people on very important ceremonial occasions. These were not secular buildings as they kind of come down to us today. And these sloped pyramids, which are so famously wrought by the Mayans, are usually near an observatory. And we will look at the observatory before we leave Mayapan. And this combination of a temple, priestly temple for religion, and an observatory, which appears, you know, the Mayans were so good at astronomy, is interesting because we see something like science and religion right here on the site. So actually where you are looking right now is a very sacred part of the city of Mayapan. And as you take in this fantastic example of a Mayan pyramid, you may be noticing that there's a black color around. The rocks are kind of a gray with a black. This has to do from the region here where the rocks were taken. But they did something else kind of interesting at Mayapan. The rulers of the city dragged parts of Uxmal, which is another famous Maya city not too far from here. They actually, I would say, looted in a certain way and brought parts of that city in to build this city quickly. And those of you who like your history know that many cultures over time have done that, right? So the ancient Christians took the Roman columns and used them for churches. So we would say repurposing, but it is in evidence here at Mayapan. So if you look carefully, you do see mainly this blackish kind of stone, but you also see some other things that have been brought in. And the last point I'll make before we turn away from the pyramid is that some of you may be wondering, is there any evidence of painting on this site, fresco painting? Yes, there is evidence in Mayapan of paintings, but there's not much to go on, but the pigments are there, the blue and the red. So that's what I can tell you about painting on the site of Mayapan. Another important feature of the city of Mayapan is the presence of numerous dwellings or homes. And you're looking at one right now behind me that is sort of nicknamed the Room of the Kings. And where you see the columns, you have to imagine that on top of the columns would have been a roof. What kind of roof? Well, it could have been a timber roof, but you will also notice when you come to the Yucatan, there are a lot of palm trees and other features, and a famous handicraft, even today in the Yucatan, is the weaving of sisal. So you have sort of two choices for the roof here. And I know this doesn't look like the largest, especially if you're in LA, the largest, coolest house, but it would have been. These were large homes by the standard of the day. And I'm going to walk and show you just how it would be to enter a doorway, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it because of the height of the door. So here we are entering the house. And columns, not very tall. I'm going under the doorway of a royal room from a royal house at Mayapan. So now we're standing in front of a round temple, which sort of looks like an observatory from other Mesoamerican references you would know, and also looks something like El Caracol or a snail-like shaped structure. Amazing domed type of architecture, but I also wanted to point out these glyphs. I mentioned to you that some of the building materials for this site were taken from Uxmal, another Maya city, and here you can see pieces that have been integrated into the architecture. So we have repurposing again. I'm standing in front of another part of the round temple at Mayapan, right in front of a mask, a very famous portrait, you could say. I'd like to introduce my cousin Todd Ellsworth, who's going to tell us a little something about the mask. Todd, you've lived in the Yucatan for how many years?
Well, so far, 26.
26 years.
Long time.
What can you tell us about this mask?
Well, the most striking feature is that usually today when we find the mask of chalk, the nose has been destroyed or partially destroyed, and here we have one that's totally intact. And in addition to that, on either side of the profile, there are glyphs as well, and usually those have been rubbed out. So this is a very unusual
situation. A good example. And who was Chalk?
Well, Chalk was the god of the rain, or the god of the water, because being in Yucatan, since there's so little water, the ancient Mayas needed the help of chalk for water for drinking as well as for the crops.
Interesting. So very important. We're coming from Los Angeles. We know the need for rain, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you for helping us understand a little bit about this cool mask built right into the architecture at Mayapan.